Orphan girl challenges Stallion. Millionaire CEO of the Old West says the horse threw 70 men. Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another captivating tale from the Old West. If you're enjoying these stories of courage, redemption, and the untamed frontier, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world to me, and it helps these stories reach more wonderful people like you. Now, saddle up and let me take you back to 1882, to a dusty town in Wyoming where a young orphan girl's destiny was about to change forever. The dust swirled around Emma's bare feet as she stood at the edge of the crowd in Cheyenne's main square. At 12 years old, she'd survived 2 years on the streets since her parents died of cholera. Her stomach cramped with hunger, but something extraordinary had drawn everyone here today. "That's Thunder," a cowboy shouted. "Mr. Blackwood's demon horse. 70 riders he's thrown." Emma's green eyes fixed on the magnificent black stallion, rearing in the makeshift corral. Nathaniel Blackwood, the railroad tycoon who owned half of Wyoming territory, stood on a platform above. $100 silver to anyone who can ride Thunder for 1 minute, he boomed. Emma watched cowboy after cowboy get thrown within seconds. The stallion's fury was breathtaking, but something in his wild eyes called to her broken spirit. "Last call," Blackwood announced as the sun began to set. "Is there no one with courage? I'll ride him." Emma's voice rang out before she could stop herself. The crowd erupted in laughter. The scrawny orphan girl in her torn dress looked absurd, but Emma stepped forward. Chin high. "What's your name, child?" Blackwood asked, his gray eyes sharp. "Emma McKenna, sir." Beside him, an elegant woman in emerald green leaned forward with interest. Victoria Blackwood was known for her charitable works throughout the territory. "Why do you think you can succeed where grown men failed?" Blackwood challenged. Emma looked directly at Thunder, who had stopped moving to stare at her. "Because I ain't trying to break him, sir. I'm just asking him to let me ride," Victoria whispered urgently to her husband. He frowned, then nodded. "Sign the waiver first. I won't be responsible if you're killed." Emma ducked through the fence rails, her heart pounding. Thunder stood in the center, sides heaving with sweat, his wild eyes fixed on her approach. "I know what it's like," she whispered, extending her hand slowly, "to be alone, to have everyone think you're nothing but trouble. But I see you, Thunder." The stallion's ears flicked forward. He stepped toward her, then pressed his velvet nose into her palm. The crowd gasped. "I'm going to climb on your back now," Emma continued softly, "not to break you, but because we both need this." She grasped his mane and pulled herself up. Thunder stood frozen for 3 heartbeats, then exploded into motion. But instead of violent bucking, he moved with controlled power, galloping the corral's perimeter. Emma didn't fight him. She moved in perfect harmony with his rhythm, her small body flowing with his. The crowd fell silent in awe. Even Blackwood leaned forward, amazed. Victoria's hand covered her mouth, tears in her eyes as she watched the orphan girl and the untamable stallion dance together. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. Finally, Thunder slowed to a stop in the center. Emma slid down, legs shaking, and the stallion lowered his great head to nuzzle her shoulder. The crowd exploded in cheers. Blackwood descended with a leather pouch heavy with silver dollars, but Victoria caught his arm. "Nathaniel," she said clearly, "the child needs more than money." Victoria knelt beside Emma. "Where are your parents, dear?" "Dead, Mom. 2 years now." "And where do you live?" Emma's silence was answer enough. "We're taking her home," Victoria announced. "Now, Victoria," Nathaniel began, "don't argue. You saw what happened. This child has a gift." She turned to Emma. "Would you like to come live with us? You'd have your own room, meals, and I believe you've already chosen your horse." Emma's vision blurred with tears. She couldn't speak, only took Victoria's soft hand in her calloused one. "Well," Nathaniel said gruffly, though his eyes were bright, "I suppose." Thunder's finally found his rider. He handed Emma the silver. "You earned this fair and square. Finest horsemanship I've seen in 40 years. As their carriage rolled away, Emma sat between the Blackwoods, hardly believing her fortune. She glanced back at Thunder being led behind. Then, his eyes never leaving her. "Don't worry," Victoria squeezed her hand. "You two are meant to be together." Emma allowed herself to believe that fairy tales could come true, even for orphan girls in Wyoming. But across town, Aldrich Sterling watched their departure with calculating eyes. already planning how to use the girl's gift for his own purposes. The orphan who tamed the untamable had made both powerful friends and dangerous enemies in a single afternoon. Emma woke in the softest bed she'd ever known, morning sun streaming through lace curtains. 6 months had passed since the Blackwoods took her in, transforming her from street orphan to young lady. She could conjugate French verbs and play piano, but the moment lessons ended, she raced to the stables where Thunder waited. Miss Emma, Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, called, "A lady doesn't run." "I'm not a lady yet." Emma laughed, disappearing outside. Life at the Blackwood mansion was a fairy tale. Nathaniel treated her like a daughter. Victoria showered her with affection they'd never been able to give a child of their own. Thunder had become her whole world. Together, they performed every Sunday for crowds, with proceeds going to Cheyenne's orphanage. But that morning, everything changed. Emma found Victoria crying in the conservatory, a letter crumpled in her lap. "What's wrong?" Emma asked, alarmed. "Nothing, dear one," Victoria said, wiping her eyes hastily. Nathaniel entered, his face grim. "She should know, Victoria. It concerns her." "Know what?" Fear crept up Emma's spine. "Someone's been making inquiries about you, about any surviving relatives." Nathaniel held up an official-looking document. "Sterling claims to have found an uncle in Missouri." Emma's world tilted. "I don't have an uncle. Mama never mentioned family." "Nevertheless, this Josiah McKenna has filed for guardianship. Says he's been searching since your parents died." "It's a lie." Emma jumped up. "Sterling's behind this." As a summon, the butler appeared. "Sir, Mr. Sterling insists on seeing you." They met in Nathaniel's study. Sterling sat like he owned the place, that calculating smile playing on his lips. "I trust you received the correspondence about young Emma's uncle," he said smoothly. "What's your game?" Nathaniel demanded. "No game. Simply reuniting family, though." Sterling examined his nails. "Josiah is a simple farmer. Can't provide Emma's opportunities here. The education, comfort, chance to perform with that magnificent horse. Get to the point." Nathaniel growled. Sterling leaned forward. "P.T. Barnum's Associates are launching a new Wild West show. They need authentic acts. A girl who can ride an untamable stallion worth a fortune. 50-50 split, naturally. Or she goes to a pig farm in Missouri with Uncle Josiah." Thunder screams split the air. The stallion had broken through his stall door again, calling for Emma. "Excuse me," Emma said with icy politeness, then ran. She found Thunder in the yard, agitated like never before. Thomas, the head groom, appeared breathless. "Miss Emma, there's a man at the back gate claiming to be your uncle. Has legal papers." Emma's mind raced. Sterling had planned this for weeks. "Saddle Thunder," she ordered. She rode straight to the back gate where a weather-beaten man waited with the sheriff, his eyes lit with greed, not affection. When he saw her, "Emma, my dear niece," he cried. Reaching out, Emma kept Thunder dancing out of reach. "If you're my uncle," she called loudly, enough for the gathering crowd to hear, "tell me about my father's scar." The man blinked. "Scar? The one on his hand? From when you boys were young? How'd he get it?" Josiah's eyes darted nervously. Sterling hadn't prepared him for questions. "Well, it was. What was my mother's maiden name? Where were they married? What was Papa's horse called?" With each unanswered question, the crowd muttered louder. The sheriff stepped back, hand on his gun. "Mister, you got some explaining to do." Thunder reared suddenly. Sterling approached with 6 hired men. "Enough games," Sterling snarled. "The girl comes with us. Forged documentation." Nathaniel's voice rang out. He strode through the crowd with Victoria and his own men. "Sheriff, investigate Mr. Sterling's fraud." The confrontation might have turned violent, but Thunder charged forward, scattering Sterling's men like ninepins. Emma clung to his back as he wheeled and reared, protecting her. "Call him off," Sterling shouted, scrambling backward. "I can't," Emma said, smiling her old street orphan smile. "Nobody controls Thunder. He just chooses to let me ride." In the chaos, the sheriff arresting Josiah. Sterling retreating with threats. Emma felt Victoria's hand on her knee. "Brilliantly done, dear one." Emma dismounted into Victoria's embrace. "Is it over?" Nathaniel joined them, smiling rarely. Sterling overplayed his hand. "Fraud, attempted kidnapping. He'll be leaving Wyoming if he's smart." That night, as Emma drifted to sleep, she heard Thunder's restless movements below. The stallion sensed what she was beginning to understand. Sterling's retreat was just a pause. She'd made an enemy, and enemies in the Old West had a way of returning. But for now, she was safe, loved, and home. The girl who tamed the untamable had also learned to fight for the life she'd built. And with Thunder as her guardian and the Blackwoods as her fortress, she was ready for whatever shadows might come calling. Spring arrived in Wyoming with a blessing of wildflowers across the prairie. Emma woke on her 14th birthday to find her room filled with ribbons and presents. 2 years with the Blackwoods had given her everything she'd dreamed of. During those cold nights on the streets, "Happy birthday, darling," Victoria swept in with breakfast. Nathaniel following with an enormous box. "All this for me," Emma's voice came out small. The gifts were overwhelming: books, jewelry, a new riding habit. But the large box held the greatest treasure, a custom saddle tool with wild horses. Thomas helped design it, Nathaniel explained. Made specifically for Thunder. Emma hugged them both, tears on her cheeks. "It's too much." "None of that," Nathaniel said gruffly. "You brought us more joy than you know." The birthday party that evening would host half of Wyoming, but as Emma dressed, Thomas knocked urgently. "Miss Emma, Sterling's been seen in town. He's not wanted anymore. Lawyers got the charges dismissed. And he's got a woman with him, dressed in black. Claims to be your relative." Emma's blood chilled. "Another fake relative? Does Nathaniel know?" "He's posted extra guards. You're not to go anywhere alone." Despite the worry, the party was magical. Emma danced, laughed, and tried to forget the shadow of Sterling. As sunset approached, it was time for her performance with Thunder. The crowd gathered as Emma, in her emerald riding habit, mounted Thunder with a new saddle. They moved as one being through complex maneuvers, jumping impossible heights, Emma standing on Thunder's back as he cantered, arms spread like wings. The crowd erupted in cheers. In the crush of well-wishers, Emma didn't notice the woman in black until a hand gripped her arm. "Hello, Emma," the woman said softly. "Or should I say, Elizabeth?" Emma froze. No one had called her that since. "You look just like your mother." "Sarah always was the pretty one. You knew my mother," Emma choked out. "Knew her? I'm her sister. Your Aunt Constance, the one she never told you about." Emma searched the woman's face, finding familiar features, the nose shape, the head tilt details. "That couldn't be faked. My mother said she had no family because she ran away." Constance's eyes flashed. "Ran off with James McKenna, left me to care for our dying parents alone. But blood is blood." "Emma," Victoria appeared. "There you are." She stopped, seeing Emma's pale face. Constance Mills, the woman introduced herself, Emma's maternal aunt, her actual family. Victoria's smile could cut glass. "How interesting. Where were you when Emma was living on the streets?" "Searching. Unlike some, I don't have unlimited resources. But now, you'll what?" Nathaniel appeared with his men. "Try to take her?" "We've seen this before." Constance smiled. Sterling approached from behind. "Actually, this time is different. I have proof." She produced an aged photograph to young women, one unmistakably Emma's mother. Then a birth certificate. Elizabeth Sarah McKenna, born March 15, 1868, St. Louis, Missouri. Emma's world crumbled. St. Louis. She had fleeting memories of a big house, roses. "Even if you're her aunt," Nathaniel said steadily, "Emma's happy here. She's being exploited." Sterling interrupted, performing like a circus act. "My mother is dead," Emma shouted. "She died holding my hand." "Yes." Constance softened slightly. "Sarah died too young, but I'm here now, Elizabeth, to take you home. This is my home." Thunder screams split the air. The stallion reared in his paddock, eyes rolling white. Then Emma smelled its smoke. Fire. The stables, chaos erupted. Emma sprinted toward the flames, hearing horses screaming. Without thinking, she plunged into the burning stable. The heat was overwhelming, smoke searing her lungs. She found Thunder's stall, fumbled with the hot latch, burning her hands. Thunder burst out, but didn't flee. He lowered his head, and Emma hauled herself onto his back. Thunder carried her through the flames, past falling beams, into the cool air. They emerged to find Victoria sobbing with relief, Nathaniel white-faced. But Emma's eyes found Constance and Sterling standing in an untouched area. "You did this." Emma gasped. "Prove it," Sterling said coldly. Thunder charged. Sterling barely dodged, and Thunder herded him like a wayward calf into the sheriff's arms. "Let's talk about how that fire started," the sheriff said grimly. Constance stood alone, composure cracking. "I didn't know about the fire. I swear, I just wanted. Sterling promised me money. I've lost everything my husband left. I have debts. Emma saw not greed, but desperation in her aunt's eyes. She remembered her own desperate time on the streets. Nathaniel. Emma said softly, could we help her? Not Sterling, but Aunt Constance? You have too generous a heart, Victoria said. My mother would want me to help her sister, Emma said simply. And so Emma's 14th birthday ended with unexpected mercy. Constance, subdued and grateful, joined the Blackwood household. Sterling was hauled away in chains. I don't deserve your kindness, Constance told Emma that night. Emma touched her new locket. Photos of the Blackwoods and thunder inside. Maybe not, but family is complicated. Second chances are the greatest gift we can give. Thunder nickered softly in his temporary stall. The fire had destroyed much, but no lives were lost. Emma had learned that family wasn't just blood, it was choice, forgiveness, and courage to trust after betrayal. 2 years of peace had transformed the Blackwood Ranch. At 16, Emma had blossomed into a young woman whose performances with thunder were legendary throughout the territories. The rebuilt stables were grander than ever, and Constance had become indispensable to Victoria's charitable work. Miss McKenna, you simply must consider it, Mr. Pemberton from New York leaned forward in the parlor. Buffalo Bill's Wild West show tours Europe next year. Queen Victoria herself requests a command performance. Emma sat straight, hands folded properly. I'm honored, but think of it. Perform for royalty, Paris, London, Rome. He named a figure. That made even Nathaniel's eyebrows rise. Money isn't the issue, Emma said quietly. This is my home. After Pemberton left, Emma escaped to the stables. Thunder greeted her warmly as she pressed her face to his neck. Sometimes I wonder if we're meant for bigger things, she whispered. You can't leave, said a familiar voice. Jonathan Daniels leaned against the door, his smile making her heart skip. The son of Nathaniel's business partner had become a frequent visitor recently. Eavesdropping is rude, Emma said, smiling, so is hiding when you have a guest. He produced a wrapped package, early birthday gift. I wanted to give it privately. Inside was a leather journal embossed with a galloping horse. For your thoughts when you ride. Jonathan. He stepped closer, suddenly serious. I've been accepted to law school. I'll be gone 3 years. But when I return, I intend to court you properly. If you'll have me. Emma's breath caught at his straightforward honesty. 3 years is long. I'm not asking for promises. Just don't leave for Europe without saying goodbye. Thunder snorted, ears pinned back, staring at the horizon. A dust cloud marked approaching. Riders, many of them. Get to the house, Jonathan said sharply. Now. They burst inside to find Nathaniel at the window with his rifle. Riders. At least a dozen. Then, surprisingly, laughter. Blackwood, you old dog. Come greet your guests. Colonel Samuel Morrison, Nathaniel's army friend, had arrived with a cavalry unit. After introductions, Morrison explained his purpose. The army is organizing a grand exhibition for the territory's 20th anniversary. We want Miss McKenna to train with our men for 1 month to learn our techniques and teach us hers. Train with the cavalry? Emma felt excitement flutter. At Fort Laramie, properly chaperoned, Mrs. Blackwood could accompany her. Absolutely not, Nathaniel said flatly. What followed was the Blackwoods' first real argument. Victoria saw opportunity. Nathaniel feared danger. Surprisingly, Constance sided with Victoria. Sarah would want her daughter to be fearless. Constance said quietly. Thunder settled matters by somehow appearing at the parlor door. Having escaped his stall, he walked to Emma, then Morrison, then back, his message clear. Even the horse knows. Victoria smiled. Nathaniel agreed with conditions. Victoria would accompany Emma. They'd return weekends, and any danger meant immediate return. That night, Emma wrote in her new journal, emotion swirling. Jonathan's declaration, the cavalry opportunity, life approaching a crossroads. Constance knocked, carrying a small package. I've been saving this. It was your mother's. Inside was a silver compass engraved true north. Sarah carried this traveling west. She said it was about finding your true path. Constance paused. She'd want you to have it now. Emma hugged her aunt. This woman who'd entered through deception but stayed through love. Thank you for becoming the aunt I needed. You saved me, Emma, in every way possible. Constance wiped tears. Now, about young Mr. Daniels. They talked. Late about love, choices, paths opening before them. Outside, thunder stood sentinel, while stars wheeled overhead. In the morning, Emma would prepare for cavalry training. In 3 weeks, Jonathan would leave for school. The circus still courted her for Europe. Life grew complicated in ways the orphan girl never imagined. But tonight, she was simply Emma's beloved daughter, cherished niece, gifted rider, young woman discovering her destiny. The compass lay cool in her hand, pointing north toward a future bright with possibility. Fort Laramie had transformed Emma in unexpected ways. A month of dawn drills, cavalry charges, and teaching hardened soldiers to read their horses had been exhausting and exhilarating. Now, preparing for the grand exhibition, she felt ready and terrified. "You'll be magnificent," Victoria assured her, adjusting Emma's modified cavalry uniform in deep blue with silver trim. The fort overflowed with spectators, dignitaries, reporters, hundreds of ordinary folks. Emma peeked through the tent. At the crowd, stomach churning, stage fright, Colonel Morrison appeared beside her. "I've performed hundreds of times. Why is this different?" "Because now you represent something bigger, proof that a young woman can ride as well as any man. That's a heavy burden." A commotion erupted. Jonathan Daniels pushed through the crowd, breathless. He should have been halfway to Boston. Double quotes Emma. "I rode all night. Sterling's out of prison. He's recruiting men, planning something." The bugle called performers to position. Morrison frowned. "We have security, but I'll alert them." He looked at Emma. "Want to withdraw?" Emma thought of everyone who'd come, of Thunder waiting, of what she represented. "No, I won't let him make me afraid." "Emma, please." Jonathan caught her hands. "This feels wrong. Stay close to Victoria and Nathaniel. Keep watch." The exhibition began with cavalry drills, sharpshooting, trick riding. The crowd loved it all, but waited for the girl and the untamable horse. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison announced, "Miss Emma McKenna has trained with our cavalry, sharing her gift while learning our traditions. She and Thunder will demonstrate perfect unity of rider and mount." Emma entered on Thunder to deafening roars. They began with patterns perfected over years, figure eights at full gallop, sliding stops, spins that made Thunder dance. Then cavalry elements. Emma drew a saber, guiding Thunder through sword exercises with perfect balance. They charged targets, her blade singing with precision that amazed military observers. For the finale, 6 cavalry riders formed obstacles for Thunder to navigate at full speed. Emma had done it perfectly in practice. 3 passes went flawlessly. Thunder flowed like water between horses. The crowd was on its feet. Then she saw him. Sterling sat on a cavalry horse at the arena's far end, wearing a stolen uniform. The gun in his hand was very real. Double quotes. "Hello, Emma," he called in a sudden hush. "Did you think prison could hold me?" Screams erupted. People scrambled for exits. Cavalry riders reached for weapons, but Sterling had positioned himself perfectly. Any shot risked hitting the crowd. "Here's what happens," Sterling announced. "You dismount and come with me, where we see how many people I can hit. You're surrounded." Morrison shouted, "I don't need escape. I need justice. That girl cost me everything." Emma decided instantly. She slipped from Thunder's back, walking toward Sterling. "All right, you win." "Emma, no." Victoria screamed. Sterling grinned triumphantly. "See how easy?" Emma whistled 3 sharp notes. Thunder exploded past Sterling. So close his wind spun the man around. Sterling's horse reared in panic. The gun fired harmlessly as Sterling fought for balance. Emma was already moving. Cavalry training had taught her to use momentum. She grabbed Sterling's boot and pulled. He crashed down, gun skittering away. Thunder placed himself between them, eyes promising death if Sterling moved. "It's over," Emma said as soldiers surrounded them. Finally over. Sterling was dragged away screaming threats. Emma stood shaking. She could have died. They all could have. Then Jonathan was there, pulling her into his arms. "You brave, foolish girl." "I had to protect them," she whispered. The crowd erupted in the loudest cheers yet. Emma was surrounded by family. Victoria, Nathaniel, Constance, Jonathan, Morrison clapping her shoulder. "Bravest thing I've ever seen," Morrison said. "If you want a commission, thank you." Emma laughed through tears. "But I've had enough military life." Later, after Sterling was secured and the exhibition concluded, Emma found herself alone with Thunder in his stall. The stallion nuzzled her gently, checking for injuries. "Our performing days might be ending," she said softly. "Is that okay?" Thunder's nicker seemed like agreement. They'd proven everything needed. The orphan girl had become a woman of courage. The untamable horse had shown partnership trumped dominance. Nathaniel appeared. His stern expression softened. "We need to Talk about adoption. Emma's breath caught. What? Victoria, and I want to make it official. You're already our daughter in every way that matters. He pulled out a document. Emma Blackwood. If you'll have us. Emma couldn't speak through tears. Just nodded and threw her arms around the man who'd become her true father. One more thing, Nathaniel said. Jonathan's decided to study law here instead. Something about not wanting 3 years away from his future. When you're ready, he has my blessing to court you properly. As fireworks lit Fort Laramie's sky, Emma stood between her parents, watching colors explode overhead. Jonathan held her hand in the darkness. Constance chatted with Morrison about charity events. The hungry orphan girl was gone. In her place stood Emma Blackwood, daughter, horsewoman, young woman ready for whatever future awaited. Thunder grazed peacefully nearby, no longer wild, no longer alone. Sometimes the best stories weren't about taming something wild. They were about the lost souls finding each other and discovering that together they could face anything. 5 years had passed like a dream. At 21, Emma Blackwood was one of the most sought-after horse trainers in the West. She and Jonathan had married 2 years ago in a ceremony that brought all of Cheyenne to the ranch. Thunder, now 15, had sired a line of extraordinary horses, though none matched his spirit. This morning, Emma stood in the nursery, hand on her growing belly, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Jonathan found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Couldn't sleep, he murmured. The baby's restless, like thunder before a storm. Speaking of storms, Jonathan's voice grew serious. I received a telegram. Sterling died in prison last week. Heart failure. Emma felt only a distant sadness. The man who tried to destroy her life had destroyed his own instead. May he find peace he never gave others. A commotion from outside drew their attention. Victoria burst through the door, tears streaming. Nathaniel collapsed in his study. The doctor's with him now. The next hours blurred together. Nathaniel had suffered a stroke. He would live, the doctor said, but his left side was paralyzed. The robust man who'd built an empire was suddenly fragile. Emma sat beside his bed, holding his good hand. I'm here, Papa. His eyes, still sharp despite his body's betrayal, fixed on her. He struggled to speak. The ranch. Don't worry about that now. No. His grip tightened. Must tell you. Documents. Safe. Ranch. Yours. Emma's eyes widened. Papa, no. It should go to already. Decided. You, Thunder, showed me. Heart. Matters more than blood. Over the following weeks, Emma learned the depth of Nathaniel's gift. He quietly transferred ownership of the ranch to her, ensuring that regardless of what happened, she and her children would always have a home. Jonathan would manage the railroad interests, but the land, the heart of everything, was hers. He always said you were the daughter he was meant to have, Victoria told her one evening as they sat with Nathaniel. Not born to us, but sent to us. Constance, now gray-haired but still energetic, managed the household with military precision. Sarah would be so proud, she often said. Her daughter became everything she dreamed. One night, as spring thunder rolled across the prairie, Emma felt the first labor pains. Jonathan rode hard for the doctor while Victoria and Constance attended her. The storm raged as Emma struggled, matching the intensity of her pain. Then, between one breath and the next, a cry pierced the night. Emma's daughter entered the world as lightning illuminated the sky. She's perfect, Jonathan breathed, tears on his cheeks. What will you name her? Victoria asked. Emma looked at her daughter's eyes, green like her own, but with a wild spark that seemed familiar. Through the window, she heard Thunder's triumphant whinny. Hope, Emma said softly. Hope. Sarah Blackwood Daniels. Nathaniel helped to the nursery in his wheelchair, held his granddaughter with his good arm. She has your spirit, he managed. Wild one, as if in answer. Thunder appeared at the window, impossible for a horse his size, but Thunder had always defied possibility. The great stallion looked in at the baby, and Hope's crying stopped. Her tiny hand reached toward him. The legacy continues, Constance whispered. Emma looked around the room. Her husband, her parents by choice and love, her aunt by blood and forgiveness, her daughter by miracle, and Thunder, her soul's companion, the orphan girl who'd stood alone in a dusty square, had become the center of a family bound not just by law but by love. Tell me the story again, Hope would ask years later, about the girl who tamed the wild horse. And Emma would tell her about hunger and hope, about choosing love over fear. About a stallion who chose to be ridden and a girl who chose to be brave. She'd tell her about Victoria's gentle strength and Nathaniel's hidden kindness, about Constance's redemption and Jonathan's faithful love. But most of all, she'd tell her about Thunder the horse who'd thrown 70 cowboys but carried a starving orphan. Straight into a fairy tale. Thunder lived to the remarkable age of 30, long enough to teach Hope to ride. On his last day, he walked to the hill overlooking the ranch and stood watching the sunset. Emma found him there, lay her head against his neck, and thanked him for everything. "You saved me," she whispered, "in every way a person can be saved." Thunder's last breath came with the evening star's first light. They buried him on that hill, where wildflowers grew in abundance every spring. Years later, when Emma's hair was silver and Hope had children of her own, people still told the story. How a millionaire's challenge had brought together an orphan and an untamable horse. How love had transformed them all, the bitter into sweet, the wild into free, the lost into found. And sometimes, on storm-filled nights, Hope's children swore they could hear hoof beats on the wine. Thunder still running free, still watching over the family he'd helped create, still wild, still wonderful, still theirs. The orphan girl had become the happiest woman in the world, just as Nathaniel had promised, not because of wealth or comfort, but because she'd learned the greatest truth, that love, once chosen, becomes its own miracle. And in the end, that was the only taming that ever truly mattered. 10 years had passed since Thunder's death. Emma, now 43, stood in the same corral where she'd first ridden the legendary stallion. Her daughter Hope, 22 and fierce as a prairie storm, was attempting to recreate history with Thunder's last son, a black colt named Midnight Hood. Inherited his sire's wild spirit. "He's thrown everyone who's tried," Hope said, eyeing the stallion who paced the fence like a caged panther. "Even Thomas's son won't go near him." Emma smiled, seeing herself in Hope's determined green eyes. "Your grandfather Nathaniel used to say Thunder had thrown 70 riders. The number grew with each telling." "How many was it really?" 43, I counted. Emma touched the fence, remembering. But numbers didn't matter. What mattered was that he was waiting for the right person. Jonathan approached from the house, his law practice having made him one of Wyoming's most respected men. "Like mother, like daughter," he said, kissing Emma's cheek. "Should I fetch the doctor now or wait until after she's thrown? Your faith is touching, Papa," Hope said dryly. The crowd gathering was smaller than in Emma's day, but no less interested. Word had spread that Hope Daniels intended to ride Midnight. Among the spectators, Emma noticed a well-dressed stranger, a woman perhaps 30 years old, watching intently. "I don't like this," Victoria said, now 70 but still sharp. She'd moved into the main house after Nathaniel's death 5 years ago. "That horse has devil eyes, just like his father." Thunder's eyes weren't devilish, Emma corrected gently. They were wild. "There's a difference." Hope entered the corral with the same quiet confidence Emma had shown 30 years ago. Midnight stopped pacing, his attention fixed on her. The crowd held its breath. "I'm not here to break you," Hope said softly, extending her hand. "I'm here to ask if you'll run with me." The stallion approached slowly, nostrils flaring. When his nose touched her palm, Emma felt time fold in on itself. The same magic, the same moment of recognition between kindred spirits. Hope swung on Midnight's back with fluid grace. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the stallion exploded into motion, not the violent bucking everyone expected, but a powerful gallop around the corral's edge. Hope moved with him, her body in perfect harmony with his rhythm. "My God," Jonathan breathed. "It's happening again." But as Midnight completed his third circuit, something went wrong. A rattlesnake, hidden in the grass near the fence, struck out. Midnight screamed, rearing so violently that Hope was thrown. She hit the ground hard, her head striking a fence post. Hope. Emma was over the fence before anyone could stop her. Jonathan right behind. Blood pooled beneath their daughter's head. "Don't move her," someone shouted. "Get the doctor." In the chaos that followed, Emma barely noticed the well-dressed stranger slip away. All that mattered was Hope, unconscious and pale, being carried to the house. The doctor arrived within the hour, his face grave. "She's concussed badly. The next 24 hours will tell. Keep her still. Watch for fever." Emma didn't leave Hope's bedside. She held her daughter's hand, praying to whatever powers had brought Thunder into her life to spare her child. Jonathan paced the halls while Victoria and Constance, now in her 80s but still sharp, took turns bringing food Emma wouldn't eat. On the second night, Hope's fever spiked. Emma bathed her burning forehead, whispering stories of thunder, of courage, of love that conquered fear. Outside, Midnight, who'd been inconsolable since the accident, broke free from his stall and positioned himself beneath Hope's window. Calling to her, "Let him stay," Emma told Thomas's son when he came to retrieve the stallion. "They need each other." Near dawn, Hope's fever broke. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on Emma's tear-stained face. "Mama, did I ride him?" "You did. Sweetheart, you rode him beautifully. Where is he? Is Midnight all right?" Emma helped her to the window. Below, the stallion stood like a statue, having kept vigil all night. When he saw Hope, he nickered softly. "He waited for you," Emma said, "just like thunder waited for me." During Hope's recovery, the mysterious woman returned. She introduced herself as Margaret Sterling, Aldrich Sterling's daughter. Emma's hand moved protectively to Hope's shoulder. "What do you want?" "To apologize," Margaret said simply, "and to warn you." She explained that her father's old associates hadn't forgotten the Blackwood Ranch or its valuable horses. "They're planning something. I don't know what, but I heard your name mentioned. I couldn't stand by and let history repeat itself. Why help us?" Jonathan asked, suspicious. "Your father tried to destroy Emma." Margaret's smile was sad. "My father destroyed himself with hatred. I won't follow his path. Besides," she looked at Hope, "I was at the exhibition where your mother saved all those people. She could have let my father shoot into the crowd, claiming self-defense. Instead, she risked her life to stop him. That kind of courage, it changes how you see the world." Emma studied Sterling's daughter, seeing sincerity in her eyes. "What do you know about their plans?" "Not much, but they mentioned the territorial governor's visit next month, and something about the ranch's water rights. Water rights in Wyoming. They were more valuable than gold." Emma exchanged glances with Jonathan. If someone was targeting their water rights during the governor's visit. "Thank you for the warning," Emma said. "Will you stay for tea?" Margaret's eyes widened at the unexpected kindness. Yes, thank you." As Hope grew stronger, she and Midnight bonded just as Emma and Thunder had. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that storm clouds were gathering. The ranch held not just their family's legacy, but the water source for half the valley. If they lost it, dozens of families would suffer. "We'll be ready," Jonathan promised, loading his rifle. "Whatever they're planning, we'll stop them." But Emma, watching Hope ride Midnight across the prairie at sunset, wondered if courage would be enough this time. She touched the compass Constance had given her years ago, its needle pointing steadily north. True north, not just a direction, but a way of living. "Help us be strong," she whispered to Thunder's memory. "Help us protect what you gave us." The wind carried the scent of coming rain, and somewhere in the distance, she could swear she heard the echo of hoofbeats, not one horse but two, running together across the endless sky. The governor's visit was 2 weeks away when the first signs of trouble appeared. Fences cut in the night, water diverted from streams, dead cattle found near poisoned water holes. Someone was systematically attacking not just the Blackwood Ranch, but every small operation in the valley. Emma called a meeting in the grand barn Thunder had once escaped from so many times. 30 ranchers attended, their faces grim. "They're trying to drive us out before the governor arrives," said Tom Morrison, the colonel's son who'd taken over his father's ranch. "Make it look like we can't manage our own land." "But who's behind it?" asked Mary Patterson, whose husband had been found beaten near their cut fences. Emma stood, commanding attention as she'd learned to do over the years. "We have reason to believe it's the Western Development Company. They've been buying up failed ranches across Wyoming." "Buying or stealing?" someone muttered. Jonathan stepped forward with a stack of documents. "I've been researching. The company is owned by Shell corporations, but I've traced the money. The investors include several territorial legislators and—" He paused. "Judge William Thornton." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Thornton would oversee any legal challenges to land rights. "We're finished then," Patterson said despairingly. "Can't fight the law when the law's against us." "We're not finished," Hope said from the doorway. She stood with Midnight behind her, Margaret Sterling at her side. "We're going to expose them. All of them." Emma felt pride surge through her as Hope laid out a plan she'd been developing with Margaret. The governor's visit would include a grand demonstration of Wyoming's prosperity. Local ranchers would showcase their horses, cattle, and crucial their water management systems. What if instead of a simple demonstration, Hope proposed, we make it a competition, best horses, best cattle, best water conservation. Invite newspaper reporters from as far as Denver. Make it impossible for them to claim we're failing, and if they sabotage the event. Morrison asked. Margaret spoke up. That's where I come in. I still have contacts among my father's old associates. I'll pose as an investor interested in the Western Development Company. Find out their exact plans. Emma saw the doubt in many faces. Trusting the Sterling seemed like madness. But she remembered another moment of choosing trust over fear. I believe Miss Sterling is sincere. Emma said firmly, the sins of the father aren't visited on the daughter. At least, she smiled at Hope, not in my experience. The meeting dispersed with renewed determination. Over the following days, the ranch became a fortress of activity. Jonathan coordinated legal defenses while Emma and Hope trained horses for the exhibition. Victoria, despite her age, organized the ranch women into a formidable intelligence network. Margaret proved invaluable. She returned from Cheyenne with crucial information. The Western Development Company planned to stage a massive accident during the governor's visit, contaminate the main reservoir, blame it on rancher negligence, then petition for government seizure of the land for proper management. They've already bribed the water inspector. Margaret reported, he'll discover the contamination just as the governor arrives. Then we need our own proof, Emma said. Documentation of the water's purity before they poison it. What followed was a week of secret preparations. Hope and the younger ranchers took water samples at night, having them tested by a chemist Jonathan knew in Denver. Emma worked with the older ranchers to document their conservation methods, creating an irrefutable record of responsible management. 3 nights before the governor's arrival, the saboteurs struck, but they found the ranch ready. Hidden guards caught 2 men pouring chemicals into the reservoir. The confrontation turned violent, shots fired. Men wounded, but the poisoners were captured. One of them, facing prison, agreed to testify. He revealed the entire conspiracy, including which officials had been bribed. Jonathan worked through the night preparing legal documents while Emma tended the wounded. You've grown into quite a strategist, Emma told Hope as they watched the sunrise. Thunder would be proud. Midnight helped, Hope said, stroking the stallion's neck. He warned us they were coming. Started screaming an hour before they arrived. The governor's visit dawned clear and bright. The ranch had never looked better, with bunting and flags creating a festive atmosphere. But tension crackled beneath the celebration. Judge Thornton had arrived with a contingent of investors, their faces dark with barely concealed rage. The water inspector, as predicted, rushed to the governor with claims of contamination. But Jonathan was ready with the night's confessions, the water test results, and testimonies from dozens of ranchers. The governor, a fair man who'd fought his own battles against corruption, listened to both sides. Then Hope proposed something unexpected. Test the water now, she said, right here, in front of everyone. Let's see what's really in our reservoir. The testing revealed exactly what they expected: pure, clean water. The inspectors prepared sample, however, tested positive for the same chemicals found on the captured saboteurs. Arrest him, the governor ordered, and Judge Thornton, I'll be requesting a federal investigation into this Western Development Company. As Thornton was led away in chains, he snarled at Emma, you think you've won? There'll be others. There always are. Maybe, Emma replied calmly, but we'll be ready. We always are. The rest of the day became a true celebration. Hope and Midnight gave a performance that rivaled Emma and Thunder's legendary displays. Other ranchers showed their stock, their families, their thriving operations. The reporter scribbled notes about the spirit of Wyoming and the courageous stand against corruption. That evening, as the governor prepared to leave, he took Emma aside. Your husband will be receiving a federal judgeship appointment. We need men of integrity in positions of power, and women, Emma asked with a smile. The governor laughed. That too, I hope. Your daughter has quite a future ahead of her. Perhaps politics? Emma looked across the yard where Hope was teaching Margaret Sterling to ride Midnight. Both young women laughing in the sunset light. Whatever she chooses, she'll change the world. They both will, like mother, like daughter, the governor said, tipping his hat. As night fell and the ranch settled into peaceful quiet, Emma walked to Thunder's grave on the hill. The wildflowers were blooming, purple and gold in the moonlight. We held the line, old friend, she whispered, kept the land safe for the next generation. Hope and Midnight will carry on what we started. A warm breeze stirred the flowers, and, for just a moment, Emma could swear she felt Thunder's presence wild and free and forever watching over the family he'd helped create. The ranch was safe, the future bright, and the legacy of an orphan girl and an untamable horse would continue. For generations to come, 5 years of peace had blessed the valley. Jonathan's federal judgeship had helped clean up territorial corruption, while Emma's ranch had become a model for sustainable operations. Hope, now 27, managed the horse breeding program with Aldrich Sterling as her business partner and closest friend. Their midnight line was sought after from California to New York. But peace, Emma had learned, was often just the pause between storms. The letter arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Emma's hands trembled as she read it. Then, read it again. Victoria, now 80 and still sharp, noticed immediately. What is it, dear? Emma passed her the letter. It was from a lawyer in St. Louis. Her mother's family, the wealthy Harringtons she'd never known existed, had located her. Her grandfather, near death, wanted to meet his only granddaughter before he passed. After all these years, Victoria murmured, "Will you go?" Emma looked out the window, where Hope was working with a young colt. Margaret beside her. "I don't know. My mother ran from that life for a reason." Jonathan arrived home that evening to find his family in deep discussion. Constance, approaching 90, but still clear-minded, had revealed things about Sarah's past she'd kept hidden for decades. "Your mother was engaged to a wealthy man," Constance explained, "Winston Harrington III, but she fell in love with your father, a horse trainer on their estate. When she refused to give up James, her father disowned her, said if she left, she was dead to them. Yet now he wants to see me." Emma's voice was bitter. "People change," Jonathan said gently, "especially when facing death. Perhaps he wants to make amends." Hope was adamant. "You should go, Mama, if only to understand where you came from." After days of deliberation, Emma decided to make the journey. Jonathan would accompany her, while Hope and Margaret managed the ranch. The train ride to St. Louis took for days, each mile taking Emma further from the life she'd built and closer to the one her mother had fled. The Harrington mansion stood like a marble monument to wealth, making the Blackwood Ranch house look modest. Emma gripped Jonathan's hand as they were led through halls, lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Winston Harrington lay propped in an enormous bed, his face gaunt, but his eyes Sarah's eyes, Emma's eyes still sharp. "Elizabeth," he whispered, "you look just like her." "My name is Emma," she said firmly, "Emma Blackwood Daniels." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Stubborn like her too. Please, sit. We have much to discuss." What followed was a conversation that spanned hours. Winston spoke of his regrets, his pride that had cost him his daughter, his years of searching after learning of Sarah's death. He'd followed Emma's story from afar, the orphan who tamed the untamable horse, who'd built an empire of her own. "I was wrong," he said simply. "Sarah chose love over wealth, courage over comfort. She chose better than I ever did," he revealed. That Sarah had been an accomplished horsewoman herself, had even trained horses on the estate. "It's in your blood. This gift with horses goes back generations. Why reach out now?" Emma asked. "What do you want?" Winston's laugh turned into a cough. "Nothing, everything. To see my granddaughter, to know the family line continues, to give you what should have been Sarah's." He gestured weakly toward documents on the bedside table. His will. He was leaving Emma not just money, but the entire Harrington estate, thousands of acres, a fortune in investments, a legacy stretching back to colonial times. "I don't want it," Emma said immediately. "I have my own legacy." "I know." Winston's eyes gleamed with something like pride. "That's why you deserve it. But think, what could you do with such resources? How many lives could you change?" Emma thought of the orphanage in Cheyenne, the struggling ranchers, the young women like Hope and Margaret who deserved opportunities. "I would need to discuss it with my family, of course. I'm not going anywhere." His smile was rueful. "Doctor gives me a month, perhaps two. Stay a few days. Let me show you your mother's world." Those days in St. Louis were a revelation. Emma discovered her mother's journals, filled with dreams of freedom and horses and wide-open spaces. She found paintings Sarah had done of the Wyoming mountains, painted from imagination. Before she'd ever seen them, she was painting her destiny. Jonathan observed, "Just as you lived yours." Emma also met cousins, aunts, uncles, families she'd never known existed. Some were cold, clearly resenting the prodigal granddaughter's return. Others welcomed her warmly, hungry for connection. On their last night, Winston called Emma to his study. Alone, grandfather and granddaughter faced each other honestly. "I'll accept the inheritance," Emma said, "but not for me, for the work that needs doing. Schools for ranch children, sanctuaries for wild horses, opportunities for women to own land and businesses." Sarah would approve. Winston said softly, "I spent my life building wealth for its own sake. You'll use it to build something better." "I had good teachers," Emma replied, thinking of Nathaniel and Victoria. "People who showed me that wealth means nothing without wisdom and love." Winston died 2 weeks after Emma returned to Wyoming. She traveled back for the funeral, this time bringing Hope and Margaret. The St. Louis society was scandalized by these Western women who wore divided skirts and spoke their minds freely. "Let them gossip," Hope said, echoing her mother's spirit. "We have work to do." The Harrington fortune, managed wisely, transformed not just the Blackwood Ranch, but the entire region. Emma established the Sarah McKenna Foundation, funding schools and libraries across Wyoming. Hope and Margaret expanded their operation, creating a training program for young women to become horse trainers and ranch managers. "Your mother would be so proud," Victoria said one evening as they watched the sunset from Thunder's Hill. "She ran from that world to find freedom, and now you're using that world's resources to give others the same freedom." Emma touched the compass at her throat. She wore it always now, true north. It had guided her mother west, guided Emma through every storm, and would guide Hope and her children in turn. "You know what I realized in St. Louis," Emma said. "My mother didn't run from wealth. She ran toward love, toward possibility, toward a place where a woman could ride free across the prairie and choose her own destiny. And she found it," Victoria said. "Through you." That night, Emma dreamed of Thunder again. But this time, her mother rode beside her, young and free and laughing. They galloped across endless grasslands under endless sky to women who'd chosen courage over comfort, love over law, freedom over fortune. When she woke, Hope was at her bedside. "Mama, you were crying in your sleep." "Happy tears," Emma assured her. "Just happy tears." Outside, midnight whinnied, calling to the dawn. A new day was breaking over the Blackwood Ranch, over Wyoming, over a legacy that now stretched from the wild frontier to the marble halls of St. Louis and back again. The orphan girl had become the bridge between two worlds, using the best of both to build something entirely new. And somewhere in the wind, if you listen carefully, you could still hear the echo of hoofbeats, thunder running free, forever wild, forever home. 10 more years had passed, bringing changes that would have seemed impossible to the orphan girl of 1882. It was now 1920, and the world had transformed. Automobiles competed with horses on Cheyenne streets. The Great War had ended, taking some of the valley's young men and returning others forever changed. Women had won the vote, with Hope leading Wyoming suffrage celebration. Emma, now 50, stood in the cemetery beside a fresh grave. Victoria had passed peacefully in her sleep at 92. Her last words a whisper, "Tell Nathaniel I'm coming." The funeral had brought hundreds of people whose lives Victoria had touched through her charities, her kindness, her fierce protection of those she loved. "She was the only mother I truly knew," Emma said to Jonathan, gripping his hand. "She saved me as much as Thunder did." Hope, now 37 and mother to 3 children of her own, stood with her husband William, a doctor, who'd come west to study the effects of altitude on tuberculosis and stay for love. Their eldest, Sarah Victoria, already showed the family gift with horses. "Grandmama," 10-year-old Sarah said solemnly, "will Great Aunt Victoria watch over us from heaven?" "Always," Emma assured her, "just like Thunder watches over our horses." Margaret Sterling had become more than Hope's business partner. She was family, the aunt to Hope's children, the sister Hope had never had. Together, they built the Midnight line into an international enterprise, their horses competing in shows from London to Buenos Aires. But success had brought new challenges. The automobile industry was pushing hard against horse culture. Developers wanted to buy the ranch for oil drilling. The wild spaces Emma had known were shrinking, fenced and parceled and sold. "We're dinosaurs," Hope said that evening as the family gathered in the study, "holding onto a way of life that's disappearing." "Perhaps," Emma agreed, "but dinosaurs left fossils, evidence they existed. We'll leave more than that." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A film crew from Hollywood had arrived, wanting to make a moving picture about the legendary Emma Blackwood and Thunder, the director. An enthusiastic young man named Ford painted grand visions of the story on silver screens across America. Absolutely not, was Emma's first response. Our lives aren't entertainment. But Hope saw opportunity. Mama, think about it. How many young girls need to see that they can be more than decorations? That they can ride and fight and choose their own paths? Margaret agreed. The world is changing. We can either let others tell our story their way, or we can control the narrative. The debate continued for days. Jonathan, ever the voice of reason, suggested a compromise. What if we cooperate on the condition that any profits go to the foundation? That the story be told truthfully, not sensationalized. Emma was swayed by a letter that arrived from a young woman in Boston. She'd heard of Emma's story, how an orphan had become a landowner, a mother, a force for change. It had inspired her to leave an abusive situation and start over. If our story can help even one person find courage, Emma said finally, then perhaps it's worth telling. The filming process was strange and wonderful. They used midnight sun, storm. The play Thunder. The resemblance was uncanny. Hope played the younger Emma in writing scenes, her skill matching her mother's at that age. Emma herself appeared as the narrator, telling her story directly to the camera. People think this is about taming a wild horse, Emma said in her opening scene, standing on Thunder's Hill. But it's not. It's about the lost souls who found each other. It's about choosing love over fear, trust over control. It's about learning that the things that make us different, the wildness, the refusal to be broken, those are our strengths, not our weaknesses. During filming, they received word that changed everything. Oil had been discovered on the ranches. Northern Boundary, the Western Development Company, rebuilt under new management, offered an astronomical sum for drilling rights. We could be wealthier than the Harringtons ever dreamed, William said, reviewing the offer. We're already wealthy, Emma replied, in everything that matters. But the decision wasn't simple. The money could fund the foundation for generations. It could build schools, hospitals, libraries across the West. But it would also mean allowing machines to tear into the land Thunder had run across, the land that had sheltered them all. The family was divided. Some of the younger generation, facing economic uncertainty, favored accepting. Others, led by Hope and young Sarah, opposed any drilling. The arguments grew heated, threatening the family harmony Emma had worked so hard to build. What would Thunder do? Sarah asked one evening, silencing the adults with her simple question. Emma smiled at her granddaughter's wisdom. He'd run free. He'd refuse to be owned or controlled by anyone's agenda but his own. Then we know our answer, Hope said. They refused the oil deal, instead creating a conservation trust that would protect the land in perpetuity. The decision cost them financially, but the unity it restored was priceless. The movie, when it premiered, was a sensation. Thunder's Girl played to packed theaters across the country. Emma found herself reluctantly famous, receiving letters from thousands of women and girls who saw their own struggles reflected in her story. One letter stood out. It was from a girl in an orphanage in Chicago, asking if the story was really true. Could an orphan really become someone important? Could a girl really ride as well as any boy? Could dreams actually come true if you were brave enough? Emma wrote back personally, as she did to every child who wrote. Yes, she told them. Yes to all of it. Be brave. Be kind. Be yourself. The rest will follow. As 1920 drew to a close, Emma stood once again in the corral where it had all begun. Storm pranced before a small crowd, with Sarah on his back. The girl rode with the same natural grace her grandmother had shown, the same harmony with the horse. She's got the gift, Hope said proudly. It's not a gift, Emma corrected. It's a choice. Every day, we choose to trust instead of control, to love instead of fear. That's what Thunder taught me. Jonathan wrapped his arm around her shoulders. No regrets about the oil. None. Some things are worth more than money. She looked at her family, Hope and William, Margaret, their children, the extended clan of hearts they gathered over the years. This is our oil. This is our gold. This connection, this legacy, this love. That night, the family gathered to watch the movie at Cheyenne's theater. Emma sat in the back, uncomfortable with the attention. But as she watched her story unfold on screen, the hungry orphan, the wild horse, the choice to trust, she felt a deep satisfaction. The actress playing young Emma whispered to Thunder, I'm not trying to break you. I'm just asking you to let me ride. In the darkness, Emma whispered along, and he did. Oh, how he did. The movie ended with the real Emma on screen, gray-haired but straight-backed, standing beside Storm. Thunder lived 30 years, she said to the camera. Long enough to teach my daughter what he taught me, that wild hearts recognize each other, that love is stronger than fear, that sometimes the best thing you can do is refuse to be tamed. The theater erupted in applause. People stood, many, wiping tears. Emma tried to slip out quietly, but Hope caught her hand. No more hiding, Mama. You've spent your whole life making others visible. Time to let yourself be seen. So Emma stood, acknowledging the applause with a simple nod. She thought of the scared orphan girl, invisible in the crowd. Now, hundreds of eyes were on her, seeing her, celebrating her. But the real celebration was quieter. It was Sarah whispering, "I want to be just like you, Grandmama." It was Margaret hugging her with tears in her eyes. It was Jonathan's proud smile, Hope's fierce love, the family she built from ashes and hope. Outside the theater, it had begun to snow. Emma caught flakes on her palm, each one unique, each one perfect in its wildness. "Thank you," she whispered to the sky, to thunder, to the strange and winding path that had led her here. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The world was changing faster than ever, but tonight, surrounded by love and legacy, the orphan girl who tamed the untamable was exactly where she belonged, home. The telegram arrived on a peaceful spring morning in 1925. Emma, now 55, was teaching her youngest granddaughter, 12-year-old Grace, how to read a horse's mood by its ears when Jonathan came running from the house, his face pale. "It's Hope," he said, his voice cracking. "There's been an accident in Argentina." The world tilted. Hope and Margaret had traveled to Buenos Aires to establish a breeding partnership with the prestigious Argentinian cavalry. According to the telegram, there had been a riding accident during a demonstration. Hope was in critical condition. "I'm going," Emma said immediately. "We're all going," Jonathan corrected. The journey to Argentina took to agonizing weeks by train and ship. Emma spent the time praying to every power she'd ever believed in, bargaining with the universe. Take her instead. She lived a full life. Hope had so much left to do. William had arrived first, using his medical connections to ensure Hope had the best care. When Emma finally reached the hospital, she found her daughter pale and still, her head wrapped in bandages. "She's stable," William said, exhausted, "but she hasn't woken up. The doctors, they're not sure she will." Margaret sat by Hope's bedside, holding her hand. Her face was etched with guilt. "It was my fault. I pushed for the more difficult demonstration." Hope was showing off the Liberty riding, no saddle, no bridle, just trust. The horse spooked at something. She fell. "Stop," Emma said firmly. "Hope made her own choices. Always has. This isn't your fault." For 3 weeks, they kept vigil. Emma told stories of thunder, sang the lullabies she'd sung when Hope was small, read from the letters that poured in from around the world. The movie had made their story famous, and thousands prayed for Thunder's daughter. On the 23rd night, as Emma dozed in her chair, she felt a hand touch hers. "Mama." Hope's voice was weak, but clear. "Did I miss the show?" The recovery was slow but steady. Hope had to relearn to walk, her balance affected by the head injury, but her spirit remained unbroken. "I'll ride again," she insisted, though the doctors warned it might be impossible. During those long months in Buenos Aires, Emma discovered something unexpected. The local horsemen knew Thunder's story. They spoke of the Blackwood methods with reverence, how trust and partnership created better horses than force ever could. "You change more than you know," an old gaucho told Emma. "My grandfather broke horses with pain. My father learned there was another way. Because of you." They returned to Wyoming in autumn to find the ranch thriving under Sarah's management. At 15, Hope's eldest daughter had stepped into her mother's role with surprising maturity. "I knew you'd bring her home," Sarah said simply. "Thunder's line doesn't give up." Hope's recovery became its own form of teaching. She couldn't ride the way she used to. Her balance would never fully return. But she developed new techniques, new ways of working with horses from the ground. Her limitation became innovation. "Maybe that's the real lesson," Hope said one day, watching Grace work with a young colt. "Not that we can overcome anything, but that we can adapt to anything." Emma felt the torch passing to the next generation. Sarah had the gift with horses. Grace had inherited the business acumen. Even little James, William and Hope's youngest, at 8, showed promise as a veterinarian, always concerned with the animal's health. But the world outside their ranch was changing rapidly. The stock market soared with reckless speculation. Prohibition had made criminals wealthy while ordinary people suffered. The Wild West was becoming myth, packaged and sold to tourists seeking adventure. We need to preserve what's real, Emma said at a family meeting. Not the Hollywood version, but the truth, the struggles, the choices, the courage it took to build something from nothing. They established the Thunder Museum on the ranch, displaying not just ribbons and trophies, but the everyday items that told their real story. Emma's original torn dress, the waiver she'd signed to ride Thunder, Victoria's journals, Nathaniel's first letter offering her a home. Visitors came from everywhere, seeking to understand how an orphan girl had built an empire, how a horse no one could ride had become the foundation of a dynasty. Emma welcomed them all, but she always emphasized the same point. This isn't about me or even Thunder. It's about choosing love over fear. It's about second chances and family you choose and the courage to trust when trust seems impossible. One visitor stood out, a young woman from Germany studying veterinary medicine, who'd read about their methods in academic journals. She stayed for months, learning not just horse training, but the philosophy behind it. In my country, things are changing, she said carefully, dark voices rising, preaching hatred and control. Your story reminds us there's another way. Emma sent her home with books, letters of introduction, and a breeding pair from the midnight line. Start small, she advised. One horse, one rider, one moment of trust at a time. Christmas 1925 was the last time the entire family would be together. Constance, now 95, sat by the fire telling stories of the old days. Hope, walking with a cane, but walking nonetheless, organized games for the children. Margaret had brought her own surprise. She'd adopted a daughter, a fierce little orphan named Rose who reminded everyone of young Emma. Full circle, Jonathan murmured, watching Rose sneak apples to the horses. No, Emma corrected, spirals. We come back to the same points, but higher each time, each generation climbing on the shoulders of the last. That night, unable to sleep, Emma walked to Thunder's grave. The stone had weathered, but the inscription remained clear. Thunder 1872 to 1902. He chose to let her ride. I'm getting old, my friend, she said to the wind. Older than you ever were. Sometimes I wonder if I've done enough, preserved enough, taught enough. The wind stirred the grass, and for a moment, just a moment, she heard it. The thunder of hooves, not one horse but dozens. All the horses Thunder had sired. All the riders who learned to trust instead of break. All the lives changed because one hungry girl had been brave enough to say, I'll ride him. Thank you, she whispered, for choosing me, for starting all of this. Back at the house, she found Hope waiting on the porch despite the cold. Couldn't sleep either? Hope asked. Too many memories. They sat together, mother and daughter, watching the stars wheel overhead, the same stars that had witnessed that first ride, that had guided Sarah McKenna west, that would watch over Sarah Victoria and Grace and James and Rose and all the children yet to come. You know what I realized in Argentina, Hope said, when I thought I was dying. What? That the story doesn't end with us. We're just chapters in something bigger. Thunder chose you. You chose to trust him, and that choice ripples forward forever. Emma pulled her daughter close. Promise me something. When I'm gone, Mama, don't. When I'm gone. Emma continued firmly, don't let them make it just about the riding. Make sure they remember the hunger, the fear, the moment of choosing trust. Over control. That's where the power is. In the choosing. I promise, Hope whispered. They sat until dawn. To generations of women who learned to ride not just horses, but the wild currents of change itself. Inside, 3 more generations slept peacefully, dreaming perhaps of horses and horizons and the courage to say yes to the impossible. The spiral continued, rising ever upward, carrying the legacy of an orphan girl and an untamable stallion toward futures they could barely imagine, but had made possible through one moment of perfect trust. Emma Blackwood Daniels died on a spring morning in 1930, exactly 48 years after she'd first ridden Thunder. She'd been teaching Rose, Margaret's adopted daughter, how to approach a nervous horse when she suddenly smiled, looked toward the horizon, and said clearly, I'm coming, boy. Then she was gone, sliding gently from Storm's back into Margaret's arms. The funeral drew thousands. The governor spoke. Ranchers from 6 states came to pay respects. But the most moving tribute came from 10-year-old Rose at the podium. She told me being an orphan was just the beginning of my story, not the end. She said Thunder taught her that wild hearts find each other. Well, she found mine. They buried Emma beside Thunder on the hill overlooking the ranch. As the coffin was lowered, Storm broke free and galloped to the graveside, whinnying once before standing silent vigil. The will surprised no one. The ranch would stay in the family forever. Each member received enough to pursue dreams, but not quit dreaming. The bulk went to schools and orphanages across Wyoming. But the real treasure was Emma's journal's 50 years of daily entries. Hope read them first, laughing and crying. She wrote about everything. Even the day Jonathan proposed, apparently he practiced on Thunder first. The Depression had hit hard, but the Blackwood Ranch survived. Hope and William opened their doors to struggling families. Just as Nathaniel and Victoria had once welcomed Emma, she'd haunt us if we did otherwise, Hope said. By 1932, the ranch sheltered a dozen families. They shared work, meals, and hope. The horses remained central, teaching patience, trust, and resilience to everyone who worked with them. Young Gray started pairing troubled youth with young horses. They heal each other. She explained, Grandmama always said Thunder saved her as much as she saved him. But the most significant change came from Rose. At 13, she was already a force of nature. When local ranchers talked about shooting wild mustangs for dog food, she exploded. And Emma would never stand for this, she declared. What followed was a campaign of letters to newspapers, meetings with ranchers, and demonstrations of how wild horses could be gentled and sold instead of slaughtered. Rose proved that profit and compassion could coexist. You've got Emma's fire, Hope told her proudly. The years rolled on. Hope passed in 1970 at 87. Her last words, I could see him, Mama. Thunder's waiting. They buried her beside her. Parents Sarah Victoria wrote Emma's biography using the journals. It became a bestseller, spreading the Blackwood methods across America. Horsemen from Texas to Montana adopted the trust-based training. Rose took over the ranch operations, marrying a veterinarian who shared her passion for horses. Their children grew up as Emma had dreamed, free, brave, and kind. By 1950, the Blackwood Ranch was legendary. Rodeo champions trained there. Movie stars bought Blackwood horses. But more importantly, hundreds of orphaned and troubled children found hope working with the horses. Every kid who comes here broken leaves whole. Rose liked to say, that's Emma's real legacy. The ranch expanded carefully, buying neighboring properties when they came available, always preserving the open range where horses could run free. The main house became an informal museum, with Emma's first riding dress displayed next to photos of her with presidents and movie stars. But the heart of the ranch remained unchanged. The corral, where Emma first rode Thunder. Every new rider started there, learning the fundamental lesson: respect the horse, offer trust, and miracles happen. In 1965, Hollywood came calling again, wanting to remake Emma's story. Rose refused. One movie was enough. The real story lives in every horse we train, every child we help. Instead, she established the Blackwood School of Horsemanship. Students came from around the world to learn not just riding techniques, but philosophy. The school's motto came from Emma's journals: trust given doubles when shared. Jonathan lived to 92, spending his last years teaching law and telling stories of Emma to anyone who'd listen. She was afraid of nothing except being ordinary, he'd say, and she was anything but ordinary. When he passed in 1964, they found he'd been secretly funding scholarships for orphan children to attend university. Emma's idea, his final letter explained, education breaks more chains than anything else. The ranch faced challenges: droughts, economic downturns, changing times, but the family held together, bound by Emma's example. When developers offered millions for the land, the answer was always the same: not for sale, not for any price. By 1975, for generations of Blackwoods worked the ranch. Emma's great-grandchildren learned to ride before they could properly walk, carrying on traditions that stretched back to that dusty afternoon in 1882. The most remarkable continuity was in the horses. Thunder's line produced champion after champion, but more importantly, they maintained his spirit: proud, strong, but willing to partner with humans who approached with respect. It's in the blood, old-timers would say, watching a young Blackwood work with a spirited colt. The gift passes down, horse and human both. Rose lived to 93, sharp until the end. Her final public appearance was at the ranch's centennial celebration in 1982. Standing where Emma had first ridden Thunder, she spoke to the crowd of thousands. Emma McKenna started with nothing but hunger and courage. She built this with trust, hard work, and refusal to let anyone tell her what a woman couldn't do. We honor her not by worshiping the past, but by living her values: courage, kindness, and belief that everyone deserves a second chance. The celebration lasted 3 days. Riders demonstrated Blackwood techniques, former students, now trainers, themselves, shared stories, musicians played, families danced, and for a moment, the modern world felt like the Old West Emma had known as night fell on the final evening. The family gathered on Thunder's Hill. 5 generations stood together, from Rose down to her newest great-grandchild. They watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Tell the story again. The youngest asked about the girl and the horse, so they told it, as they would keep telling it, generation after generation. How a hungry orphan had seen something in a wild stallion that others missed. How he'd seen something in her too. How together they'd built something that would outlast them both. The stars came out, bright in the Wyoming sky. A night breeze stirred the grass on the graves. And if you listened carefully, if your heart was open, your spirit ready, you could hear them still. The thunder of hooves, the whisper of courage, the echo of a girl saying, "I'm not trying to break you. I'm just asking you to let me ride." The ranch stands today, still in the family, still training horses and humans together. The methods have modernized, but the heart remains unchanged. Every rider learns Emma's way. Every horse is approached with respect. Every broken soul human or equine finds healing. In the main house, Emma's portrait hangs beside Thunder's. Visitors often comment on her eyes, green as prairie grass, wild as the Wyoming wind, kind as spring rain. But the family knows the real memorial isn't in paint or stone. It lives in every child who learns to trust again, in every horse saved from slaughter, in every moment when fear gives way to faith. Emma Blackwood had started with nothing and built an empire, not of money, but of meaning. The orphan girl had kept her promise to Thunder. She'd made their story matter, and somewhere beyond the sunset, beyond the horizon where sky meets earth, they run together still, the girl who wouldn't give up and the horse who chose to let her ride. Forever young, forever free, forever proof that love is always stronger than fear, and the best partnerships are built on trust, not dominance. The legacy continues. One horse, one heart, one act of courage at a time, just as Emma would have wanted, just as Thunder always knew it should be. The end is the beginning. The beginning never ends.